Theranos. Theranos claimed it could perform over 200 blood tests from a single finger prick using its proprietary Edison device, but the technology never worked. Founded in 2003 by Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos promised a revolution in diagnostics: faster, cheaper, and less invasive blood testing. For over a decade, Holmes attracted hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, securing partnerships with major corporations like Walgreens. But inside the company, the truth was far different. Most tests were secretly run on traditional commercial machines, and even those yielded unreliable results. Patients were misdiagnosed. Critical health decisions were made using faulty data. Holmes actively misled investors with fake demonstrations, inflated financial numbers, and exaggerated claims of military and pharmaceutical adoption. Whistleblowers and investigative reporting exposed the deception. Starting in late 2015 and in 2018, the company collapsed. Holmes was convicted in 2022 on 4 counts of fraud and conspiracy and sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in prison. Her COO, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, received nearly 13 years. The SEC fined Holmes, banned her from leadership roles, and ordered restitution totaling $452 million. In 2025, her appeal was denied, cementing her place in the history of corporate fraud. Turing Pharmaceuticals. Turing Pharmaceuticals gained infamy in 2015 when CEO Martin Shkreli raised the price of Daraprim from $13.50 to $750 per pill overnight, a price increase of over 5,000%. Daraprim is a life-saving drug used to treat toxoplasmosis, a parasitic infection that especially affects patients with weakened immune systems, including those with AIDS. Shkreli's strategy was to acquire the rights to older drugs with no competition and exploit their monopoly status. To prevent generic alternatives, he blocked access to drug samples and controlled the supply chain for key ingredients. While publicly defending the price hike as a rational capitalist decision, he privately acknowledged the harm to patients. This was not his only scheme. Before Turing, Shkreli operated MSMB capital and biotech firm Retrofin, where he lied about hedge fund performance, used one company's money to repay investors in another, and disguised fraud as consulting payments. In 2017, he was convicted of securities fraud and sentenced to 7 years in prison. He was ordered to pay over $64 million and permanently banned from the pharmaceutical industry, a ban reaffirmed in 2024. 23andMe 23andMe exposed the sensitive genetic and personal data of nearly 7 million customers in a preventable data breach that occurred between April and September of 2023. The breach was caused by a credential stuffing attack, where hackers used previously leaked usernames and passwords to access 23andMe accounts that shared the same login information. The company failed to require strong passwords and did not enforce two-factor authentication. Once inside, attackers exploited the DNA relatives feature to scrape massive amounts of interconnected user data. The hackers specifically targeted users of Ashkenazi Jewish and Chinese ancestry, indicating potential ethnic profiling. Despite knowing about the breach for months, 23andMe delayed public disclosure and failed to promptly alert affected users or regulators. The exposed data included names, birth years, geographic locations, family tree relationships, and genetic traits. In response, the UK fined the company £2.31 million, and US lawsuits led to a $30 million settlement. Canada's Privacy Commissioner also launched a joint probe with UK privacy authorities. The company enacted stronger security only after the damage. In 2025, 23andMe filed for bankruptcy, complicating reparations. Mylan Incorporated. Mylan Inc. lied to the U.S. government about the classification of their EpiPen autoinjector in order to pay less money back to Medicaid. From 2010 to 2017, Mylan claimed EpiPen was a low-cost generic drug, even though it had no real alternatives and was sold and advertised as a name-brand product. This allowed Mylan to give back only 13 cents for every dollar it made, instead of the required 23 cents. At the same time, it raised EpiPen prices by 400%, from about $100 in 2007 to over $600 by 2016. The company also made secret deals with health insurance middlemen to block cheaper products and paid competitors to delay selling similar medications. This scheme forced families to pay huge prices for a life-saving allergy treatment In 2017, Mylan paid a $465 million fine and later paid another $264 million in lawsuits. They also had to agree to stricter governmental oversight. Pfizer, the company that made the EpiPen for Mylan, was also forced to pay an extra $345 million for their involvement. Myriad Genetics. In 1995, Myriad Genetics patented the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, which are linked to higher risk of breast and ovarian cancer. Myriad didn't invent these genes. It isolated them from human DNA as part of their genetic testing. But the company claimed ownership over the genes and the methods to test them, blocking all other labs from offering BRCA testing. This monopoly drove up prices and prevented doctors from offering second opinions or confirming test results. Critics argued the patents harmed patients, restricted research, and gave Myriad control over essential medical information. In 2009, the American Civil Liberties Union sued to challenge the patents. The case reached the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled in 2013 that naturally occurring genes cannot be patented, even if isolated from the body. The ruling invalidated key BRCA patent claims, opening the door to cheaper tests and more research. Myriad lost its monopoly but still held hundreds of other patents and continued to sue competitors. The case led to major changes in biotech patent law and became a landmark ruling in the ethics of gene ownership. Valeant Pharmaceuticals. Valeant Pharmaceuticals used accounting tricks and massive price hikes to mislead investors and boost profits from 2008 to 2016. The company secretly controlled a pharmacy called Philidor but didn't tell shareholders. It sold drugs to Philidor at marked up prices, then counted those sales as part of its own revenue. This made Valeant look more successful than it really was. At the same time, it bought older drugs and immediately raised their prices by huge margins. For example, it raised the price of a diabetes drug called Glumetza by 800% and increased a heart medication called Isuprel by over 500%. Valeant also shuffled revenue between products to hide how it was making money. Instead of developing new medicines, its business model was to acquire drugs, jack up prices, and boost earnings on paper. However, the fraud collapsed in 2016. Valeant was forced to pay $45 million to the SEC, and its CEO paid over $700,000 in fines and restitution. Its stock crashed from over $250 to under $10 during that time. The company rebranded as Bausch Health in 2018, and several executives faced criminal charges. University of Pennsylvania. In 1999, the University of Pennsylvania ran a gene therapy trial that broke safety rules and led to the death of 18-year-old Jesse Gelsinger. He had a milder form of a rare metabolic disorder called ornithine transcarbamylase (OTC) deficiency. He should have been excluded from the trial because of a history of high ammonia levels in his blood, but the research team let him participate anyway. It should also be noted that Jesse was highly motivated to participate in the research study as well. The team, led by Dr. James Wilson, did not tell Jesse or his family that previous patients had suffered serious side effects or that monkeys had died during similar experiments. Jesse was injected with a massive dose, 600 billion virus particles per kilogram, to deliver a corrected gene. This caused a severe immune reaction that led to multiple organ failure and his death 4 days later. Dr. Wilson also had a secret financial stake in the gene therapy, which was not disclosed. He owned part of a company that stood to profit if the therapy worked. The researchers gave false or incomplete reports to regulators, ignored warning signs, and failed to protect patients. Jesse's death ended all gene therapy trials at the university and triggered nationwide reforms. uBiome Incorporated. uBiome, a health tech startup based in San Francisco, committed large-scale insurance fraud between 2015 and 2019 by lying about how and why they billed for microbiome tests. The company advertised gut kits for under $100, but secretly charged patients' insurance companies as much as $3,000 per test, often billing multiple times using the same sample. Patients were not told about the extra charges. uBiome also tricked doctors into ordering tests that weren't needed and used fake billing codes to make insurance companies pay. They sent patients more testing kits than requested, then billed for each one. The company paid kickbacks to doctors through a telemedicine network and told employees to fake medical records to cover up missing doctor consultations. uBiome's top executives, co-founders Jessica Richmond and Zachary Apt, directed the fraud. The FBI raided uBiome in April 2019, and the company soon collapsed, declaring bankruptcy in the same year. In 2021, both founders were indicted on 47 federal charges and fled to Germany, which is where they continue to reside as fugitives. The case revealed deep flaws in how startup labs were regulated and exposed abuse in direct-to-consumer health testing. Biogen's Alzheimer's drug Aduhelm was approved by the FDA in 2021, even though it had failed two major clinical trials and showed no clear benefit to patients. In early 2019, Biogen announced that the drug did not work, but later reversed its position by reanalyzing part of the data and claiming a small group of patients had improved. Experts found the evidence weak and unreliable. A congressional investigation later revealed that Biogen had an unusual and improper relationship with the FDA during the approval process, with private meetings and irregular communication. Despite scientific doubts, Biogen set the annual price of Aduhelm at $56,000, a cost far higher than any proven benefit. The company planned to spend more on marketing the drug than it had spent developing it. Medicare refused to broadly cover the drug and required doctors to enter patients into a registry, citing safety concerns. The public backlash surrounding Biogen was severe. In January 2024, the company ended sales of Aduhelm and took a $60 million loss. The scandal led to calls for stricter drug approval rules and raised serious doubts about the FDA's independence. Decision Diagnostics Corporation. Decision Diagnostics Corp committed fraud during the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic by falsely claiming it had developed a 1-minute blood test to detect the virus. Starting in March 2020, the company issued press releases stating it had a working device that could detect COVID-19 from a simple finger prick and that it was seeking emergency approval from the FDA. These claims were entirely false. There was no functioning device, no proven testing method, and no supporting data. Internal advisors had already warned the company that the test was unlikely to work. CEO Keith Berman ignored those warnings and continued to make public statements designed to mislead investors. These announcements caused the company's stock price to spike at a time when people were desperate for fast, reliable testing. The scheme exploited the public health crisis to attract investor money. In April 2020, the SEC halted trading of the company's stock. In December, Berman and the company were charged with securities fraud. The case showed how fraudsters used the pandemic to spread false hope and profit off panic.